are known throughout the world for the quality of their wines, and the grandeur of these grapes has produced medal-winning Chablis and Chardonnay, Beaujolais, and Cabernet. Another fine vintage is produced at nearby Sears Point International Raceway, but here the accent is on racing instead of Riesling. If your tastes are like those of Scott Coletta, champagne is on order to celebrate an apparent march to a repeat championship. From the Hoffman fields, will winemaker Tom Anderson uncork a fuel coupe Chianti that will leave a taste of sour grapes in the mouth of points leader John Force. And at the Golden Arches Vineyard, it's brandy by bridesmaid Jim Yates, whose runner-up finishes have him fermenting for a win. The Sonoma Valley, located in Northern California, just outside of San Francisco, is dotted with lush green vineyards, belying its winemaking capabilities. But there is one other important feature on the landscape of this valley. It is one of the country's most beautiful racetracks, Sears Point International Raceway. Hi, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland, and we're here in this bright sunshine for this Autolite Nationals. And thus far, we have seen some tremendous action, some great performances in round one, and some excitement as well. It was Tommy Johnson Jr. in the near lane against Pat Austin in round number one of Top Fuel. Tommy Johnson Jr. had the ride of his life, multiple wheel stands going down the racetrack. He was able to bring the car to a safe stop, but sacrificed the win to Pat Austin, who advances into round number two. Let's take a look at this again from the vantage point of the helmet cam mounted on Tommy Johnson's helmet. As he goes down the track, you'll see his helmet bounce back and forth as the car comes back down to the pavement. Again, a tremendous job by Tommy Johnson Jr. One, to keep the car from going over, and second, to keep it off the guardrail. There's also been some tremendous action in Funny Car, and Steve Evans has a look at some of the reasons why.
Mac, even though the heat has tremendous impact on the racing surface, not much on the racing engines. Because let's remember, it's that old West Coast cliche. It's a dry heat, plus we're right at sea level. So they're making tremendous power, which is why most drivers are fighting for control, having to work that throttle to keep the car hooked up. But a select few, like Tommy Johnson Jr., have more grip than they can deal with. Take a look at Al Hoffman in round one of Funny Car up against Casey Spurlock. It's Spurlock up in smoke, trying to deal with the Hoffman, a huge wheel stand. The car comes down hard. Hoffman finally gets back on the throttle. Spurlock in hot pursuit. Can't catch him. Al Hoffman goes to round two, and both drivers were a little shook up when I talked to them.
I lost vision of the track as soon as I stepped on the throttle, but wind lights, pedaling, whatever it takes to turn them on.
The last few hundred feet, you could hear him coming, probably.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't know where he was. I mean, when I hit, it dazed me. I really couldn't see where I was, and I seen he wasn't there. I got on it again.
That last hit, when the car really got sideways, it threw me into the roll cage pretty hard and kind of dazed me a little bit. You know, I kind of lost the race for us because I didn't get back into the throttle quick enough, and Al went by us, and it's my fault. It just about knocked me out, though.
We have to take another look at that Hoffman wheel stand, this time in slow motion. It's up, it's really up. Hoffman lifts, it starts to come down, he nails the throttle, and that saved the car. It would have broken the front wheels right off it had Hoffman not alertly got back on the gas. Let's go on board with Al. I guarantee you, under that helmet, there are some clenched teeth as he battles this thing back to the pavement. Now, there was another Funny Car in round number one that got a lot of traction, only he used it all to his advantage, and that was Whit Bazemore. Watch this. Bazemore, who's had so many problems in his long career, a 520 at top speed of the meet, 295 miles an hour. In round number two, in just a few minutes, it will be Whit Bazemore up against Chuck Etchels, and with that fine 520, Bazemore has a lane choice. He's never been more dangerous. In round two, Al Hoffman will go against Tom Hoover. What about the potential for another wheel stand? Well, it's huge because the engine in this car, Tom Anderson says, is too far back. They built it specifically for marginal racetracks. They can change it for Seattle next weekend. But right now, Al has to deal with a car that wants to fly.
Steve, we're picking up action in round number two of Top Fuel Eliminator, and it is the Corey Mack-driven McDonald's car out of Joe Gibbs Racing against the five-time Winston champion Joe Amato in the Team Valvoline car. Qualifying for this Autolite Nationals, one of the strangest affairs we've seen in a long time. A lot of cars had trouble getting down the racetrack. Our Western Auto Top Fuel qualified field shows Blaine Johnson for the 4th time this year. The #1 qualifier, Joe Amato, in the top 8. But look, Corey Mack, the best he could muster, was number 14. Shelly Anderson was on the bump. Scott Coletta comes into this race leading the Winston points chase, followed by Corey Mack, Larry Dixon. Blaine Johnson, our top qualifier, is number 4, and Mike Dunn in the number 5 spot. Both Corey McLenathan and Joe Amato had their fair share of problems in qualifying, but Corey suffered them the most. For Amato, he and his crew chief, Jimmy Brock, trying to make a comeback after a rather lackluster start of the season. And if their qualifying time is any indication, they may be on the move. A 4:87 got him in the number 6 spot. He ran 4:97 to beat Connie Coletta in the first round. Meantime, Corey Mack used all of his qualifying efforts and did not make the field until the final session, where he ran a 5:05. But good news for the McDonald's fans, he improved to a 4:93 at 300 miles an hour when he beat Rod Fuller in the first round. Amato, during qualifying, also ran over 300. Loss of traction in the middle of the race course. That cost Joe Amato a victory. 4:98 at 2:95. Corey Mack goes to the semifinals. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Autolite Nationals is brought to you by Allied Signals Autolite Spark Plugs. Guaranteed for 2 years, no matter how far you go. And by Pennzoil, the motor oil that works like liquid ball bearings. A giant crowd jammed into Sears Point Raceway for this Autolite Nationals. Stick around, more Top Fuel racing coming your way. The heat wave shimmering off the racing surface at Sears Point International Raceway near Sonoma, California at this Autolite Nationals. It is Top Fuel Eliminator round number 2, and folks, it is hot. We've already passed the mid-90s. The forecast 100 and higher here at Sears Point today. This is the La Victoria Salsa car, driven by Mike Dunn. His crew chief, Frank Bradley, giving him the sign, take it to the line. Dunn qualified 8th at a 4:90, ran 4:85, beating Larry Dixon in round 1. Blaine Johnson in the Travers Tool Company, Pietco's #1 car, qualified in the top spot, 4:84. He had a 4:95, being conservative in round 1. Johnson goes up in smoke while Mike Dunn goes 4:93 at over 300 miles an hour on a very hot day here at Sears Point. That is an excellent run. Watch again in replay. Johnson got a slight advantage at the starting line, but it was wasted as it was at about the 60-foot mark. He lost traction, and for him, the race was over. For Dunn, though, he was running on all 8 cylinders as indicated by that 300-mile-an-hour speed, plus a big win.
Well, Mike, you guys definitely had the balance of power and clutch for that lane.
Yeah, definitely. We just, the heat of the day, ran that 85 first round. We just wanted to try and run a 91 like we did yesterday in the heat of the day. And 93, that's pretty close. So, it got us a win, and we'll see what happens next round.
And a big speed.
That big speed moves Dunn and the La Victoria car into the semifinals. Back at the starting line, here's the reigning Winston champ. The guy going for 4 wins in a row. He won a week ago in Denver. Scott Coletta qualified number 5 at a 4:87. Improved to a 4:84, beating Eddie Hill in the first round. Jim Head ran 4:87 in qualifying. He out-qualified Scott Coletta in the number 4 spot, but slowed to a 7-second elapsed time, losing traction in the first round, but prevailing over Robert Reel. The Smokin' Joe's car in the far lane, the lane choice going to Coletta. The quicker cars have generally selected the lane nearest the camera. A very precise procedure staging these race cars. Scott Coletta streaking to yet another round win, adding even more to its points total. Look at this. If you thought Dunn was good, how about a 4:89? at 301 miles an hour plus. As we see in this instant replay, Jim Head had a big reaction time advantage, nearly 0.05 of a second. But it mattered little when the American International Airways car built up a head of steam. There's what 301 miles an hour looks like in slow motion, and another Final Four competitor is set.
Be honest about it, I didn't expect anybody to run an 80, but you did, 489.
489? Yeah, that's pretty good. We'll take it. The track was pretty marginal up there, and, you know, sort of similar to, I guess, what we were at last week, so let's try and do that again.
Good news, you have lane choice.
Good, that makes a big difference.
Here it does.
Last week, the problem was the high altitude at Denver, Colorado. Today, it is the sunshine beating down on the racetrack here at Sears Point. As the temperature of the track reaches 130 degree plus, which it is right now, it brings the distillates, the oils, up to the surface and makes it very slippery. But it's a great day to be watching racing for the huge crowd jammed in to Sears Point. Here's Ron Capps at the wheel of the Roger Prim Racing entry. He qualified in the number 7 spot with a 489 and slowed to an 890 after Kenny Bernstein red-lighted in round 1. Pat Austin in his Castrol Syntec machine was the number 15 qualifier. His mark in qualifying, a 505, a 506 in the first round. You saw that a bit ago as he was against Tommy Johnson Jr. when TJ had those multiple wheel stands down the racetrack. Austin is doing double duty this weekend, as he does at practically every NHRA Winston event. He also is driving his top alcohol funny car in that category of competition. The lane choice going to Austin, and here we see him in the lane nearest the camera. Another of the strange races that has occurred here this day, as Pat Austin wins it with a subpar 548. Let's just say he lost traction the least. Our replay will show you Ron Capps giving it a valiant effort. As they left the starting line, Capps' car began spinning the tires immediately. A little bit later, Pat Austin did. Capps saw that. He got back into the throttle. This time, though, the car started to move on him and he had to lift. Pat Austin squeezed back on the accelerator pedal, and it propelled him to a 548 victory and moved him to the Final Four. Here's the first pairing in that semifinal round. Scott Coletta will pick his lane against Mike Dunn. And the other side of the ladder, we see Pat Austin up against Corey McClenathan. And Corey Mack gets to pick his lane. Down at the far end of the racetrack, let's go to Steve.
Well, Pat, as long as it says win on the time card, it doesn't matter what the numbers are.
That's right. You know, as long as we just keep getting more chances to get in those later rounds, that's all we're after. You know, it's funny, I learned something on a couple weeks ago on my funny car about pushing the throttle halfway down after he shakes and smokes the tires. That worked that time. It recovered nice, and I thought I was going to be okay. I just put it about halfway down and held it there, and it just motored through like a diesel going through there.
That's experience paid off.
Every time you go down the racetrack, you learn something. Ronnie Capps offers his congratulations. International Raceway near Sonoma, California. This is the 8th annual running of the NHRA Autolite Nationals. And our Western Auto qualifying field for funny car shows John Force, the leader by a substantial margin. And the bottom half of the field is capped by Wyatt Radke's 544. Force continues to lead in the Winston chase, followed by Hoffman, Pendragon Etchels, and Dean Scusa, number 5. Quinn astonished a lot of folks this weekend. He qualified in the number 4 spot with a great 524, and as we saw earlier, ran 520, beating Cruz Pendragon in round 1. Etchels was the number 5 qualifier at a 527. He also improved with a 526 when he beat Tony Pendragon in the first round. The Kendall in-car camera shows Tim Richards, the crew chief, for Chuck Etchels, moving him up into the proper spot on the racetrack. Final adjustment on the fast orange Dodge, driven by Whit Bazemore. Bazemore used this lane in round number 1 to run his great 520. Question is, it's a lot hotter now. Can he do it again? The answer has to be no. Chuck Etchels, 534 and no tire smoke. Whit Bazemore, 545, and he smoked the tires to 279 miles an hour. Bazemore had a substantial lead off the starting line, a great reaction to the green light. But unfortunately, before the 660-foot mark, which is an 1/8 of a mile down the racetrack, He was smoking the tires, and Etchells pulled ahead. No chance for recovery by Whit Bazemore. At the far end of the track, Steve's caught up with the winner.
Well, when that hand was dealt, you weren't holding very many aces, but you still won.
Well, that's what counts, Steve. Whit Bazemore gave us a great race, but Tim Richards, Medlin, Kim LaHaye, the whole crew did a great job. I mean, this heat's brutal, but the Kendall Super Winch Dodge is going to the next round.
You'd like to get out of that lane if you can.
Oh, good Lord, I hope so.
Lane choice, at least in Chuck Etchells' mind, all important. Here is Tom Hoover, the Pioneer Art of Entertainment car, against Al Hoffman. Oh, and what a camera shot that is. We're inside the race car, the Western Auto Slick 50 Pontiac, and we're looking back at Al Hoffman as he's going through the procedures. He just opened the vent hatch in the roof, actually the escape hatch, venting out some of the smoke that builds up during the long burnout. If anybody knows how to deal with the heat here at Sears Point, it is Tom Hoover. 2 years ago, believe it or not, it was even hotter than it is today, and that's when Hoover won this Autolite National. Al Hoffman, though, has had a successful run at this race. He qualified in the number 2 spot with a 5.520, then had that unbelievable wheel-standing win over Casey Spurlock in round 1. Hoover qualified 10th with a 5.32, slowed to a 5.74 as he beat the tire-smoking Kenji Okazaki in the first stanza. Hoover's got the lane choice, though, and needless to say, his choice is the lane nearest the camera. Again, a great view of Al Hoffman sitting encased in the roll cage of the Western Auto Slick 50 Pontiac. His wife, Helen, making the final check of the car, her traditional pat to the escape hatch on the roof, and now both drivers begin to concentrate on the start. Al Hoffman using the brake to stop the tire spin. Hoover lost because he lost traction. Hoffman running a 5.27. Let's go to Steve for a recap on Pro Stock.
When it gets really, really hot, like 103 on my digital readout, you're supposed to slow down. Don't hurry. Take it easy. Well, the Pro Stock drivers are definitely heeding that advice when it comes to staging. Watch this encounter in round number 2. Jim Yates, McDonald's Pontiac, George Marnell, they pre-staged. They sat there so long, we don't have time to show you the entire 22 seconds. Finally, Marnell was in, Yates was in, and Yates does a great job and goes to the semifinal round.
It's so hot out there and everything, and we got up there, and I've been staging first all along, and I just decided I was going to wait a little long because my lights just haven't been cutting it going in first like that. So I thought I'd try going in second, but he didn't want to go in first.
Now on the other side of the ladder, and the fans love this, the Ford of Bob Glidden, the Oldsmobile of Warren Johnson, 2 old war horses. They had a little gamesmanship here or there. Finally, Warren moved in. Glidden really tested the patience of the starter. 5 seconds to get fully staged, and it didn't help him one bit. Warren Johnson pounded out a 7.12 to go to the semifinal round.
Bad Bob, he was up to his games again, and he just got bit by it.
A 7.12, 2 more of those, and you could be celebrating.
We figured 11 or 12 would be low ET for this round. It's getting like the old hamburger, like I always say, hot and greasy out there, and just to survive these rounds is the critical part.
So in the semifinal round, it'll be Kurt Johnson and Jim Yates, a rematch of the Denver final a week ago here on ESPN. KJ won that one, and it'll be his dad, WJ, against Steve Schmidt. WJ with lane choice at that 7.12. Mac?
Steve, it may be 100 plus for you and the fans out there, but it's about 70 degrees in our broadcast booth, where we are awaiting more funny car action. Stay with us. Back at Sears Point International Raceway, I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans, and we continue in round number 2 of funny car competition. Inside that cloud of smoke after the long burnout is John Force and Gary Clapshaw. John qualified number 1 at a tremendous 5.07. Ran a 5.41, beating Wyatt Radke in round number 1. Gary Clapshaw in the Fuelish Pleasure Ford Mustang, the number 8 qualifier, ran 6.34, beating Gary Dencham in the first round after qualifying with a 5.29. Also in his qualifying effort, he had some problems. A flash fire broke out. When Clapshaw had some engine problems, he hit the onboard extinguishers, got the parachutes out, and brought the Mustang to a safe stop. Now he has got the challenge of racing Force. In round number 1 against Wyatt Radke, John actually chose the right hand, or lane that is considered to be the worst here at Sears Point. When questioned by Steve Evans, he said he was experimenting. He felt he may have to run that lane sometime during the day and wanted to know what it was like. Don't think these guys don't plan ahead. As John Force now against Gary Clapshaw, the competition could be a bit tougher here for John than it was in round number 1, as Clapshaw was the number 8 qualifier. Should John win here today, it would be win number 200 for the Castrol GTX team, and would definitely be a fitting tribute to his former teammate, the late Gary Ormsby. This was his home track. Tremendous race decided in only the last few feet. John Force running a 5:36. Outdistances the 5:42 by Gary Clapshaw. Our replay will show us a good race. Reaction time advantage went to John Force, but Gary Clapshaw was not about ready to give up. Both cars stuck to the pavement well. As they headed down track, look how close it was at the middle of the course. Then it was just from the 1,000-foot mark on that John was able to pull out the win. Steve?
I can hear you pedaling.
Oh, boy. I tell you, that's probably the hardest decision to make, especially when he's right out your window. You know, we're trying to get that 200 dealer for my buddy Ormsby, and she just shook, and I said, got to do it, and I stepped off, and he moved on me, and then she hooked right up and drove right around him. So, oh, well.
Lost lane choice, though.
Well, remember, he has run the lane that nobody wants and knows what it's like over there on the right-hand side. Final pair of round number 2. A matchup of pretty much an unknown quantity in the form of Chuck Beal against one of the rising stars in funny car competition, Dean Scusa. Beal, a former alcohol racer out of San Diego, California, has only made 3 runs, not just races. I'm talking about 3 runs at NHRA national events. He qualified here on one pass, a 5:41, then ran 5:34 to upset Mark Oswald in the first round. Scusa, meantime, had qualified number 6 in a 5:27. He beat Gordy Bonham in the first round with a 5:36. Matco Tools Quick Shine 99 Pontiac of Scusa, regarded by many as one of the up-and-comers in this points chase for the Winston Championship. He came into this event in the number 5 position and could make a move up should he win here today. Beal, as I said, had only made 3 runs in competition. He debuted this car at Topeka earlier this year, made 1 pass there, ran 5:13, lost his place on the racetrack and brushed the wall. That put him out of competition in Topeka. Here at Sears Point, he's made the 1 qualifying run and that first round victory. The Reliance Petrochem car driven by Chuck Beal against Dean Scusa. Scusa, the favorite in this match. You probably heard it. Dean Scusa lifting, then getting back into the throttle because he was on the verge of the loss of traction. A 5:48 win, and the dream ends for Chuck Beal of San Diego. He has to shut it off right off the starting line. Our final 4 matchup. Oh, and what a big one this is. Chuck Etchells against John Force, and Chuck has the lane choice, while Dean Scusa goes up against the hard-charging Al Hoffman. He's got the pick of lanes over Scusa. Steve?
You know, maybe you need ice skates instead of tires. It's slick out there.
It is, you know, about the 1.314 mark. I mean, this thing's just rattling, but Lance has got it set up so it's pedalable. So, yeah, we'll take it. We're ready for the next round.
Kind of puts the driver back in the race, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of day where if you're up against Force, it really doesn't matter. I mean, you might want to match up against him to say you could beat him, you know?
Well, that would be a feather in this young man's cap. Should he be able to pull that off? We'll find out in a few moments. ESPN Speed World in the heart of the wine country of Northern California. Sears Point International Raceway near Sonoma.
This is the final four of Pro Stock Eliminator, and what a race we have in the Winston Chase. Warren Johnson leading Jim Yates by only 10 points. Jerry Eckman, Kurt Johnson, and Steve Schmidt round out the top five. And as Jim Yates brings his McDonald's Pontiac to the starting line, he's beginning to wonder, will I ever run out of Johnsons? This time he gets to tangle with Kurt in a race that Yogi Berra might have referred to as deja vu all over again. 1 week ago, these two met at the starting line in Denver, and Kurt Johnson won his first race of the '95 season. Now at the wheel of the Pietro's #1 Oldsmobile Cutlass, he gets to try to duplicate that effort against Yates. Just prior to this round, Kurt Johnson put a new motor in that Oldsmobile, hoping to be able to get enough power. For Jim Yates, he relies on the talents and skills of Dick Maskin to provide the motive power for the Pontiac. A little bit of a staging battle again. They're both taking their time about coming into the final beam. And Kurt Johnson has to shut it down. Jim's wife, Tony, celebrates a fine 718, and it is a hot day here. It really affects these normally aspirated gasoline-burning cars. These cars only use two 4-barrel carburetors on a 500 cubic inch engine. They make about 1,200 horsepower plus. But no way you could put it all to the ground today, because this racetrack, due to the direct sunlight and the extreme heat, is quite slippery. But Jim Yates has slipped his way into the finals here at Sonoma.
Tell me, is revenge as sweet as they say it is?
I tell you, it's sweet as it can be. You know, Kurt earned that win last week. I can't take nothing away from him. He drove his heart out. He earned it, but it feels good to beat him here finally again. And we're in the final. And hopefully we'll try and get us a win here. You know, this track is pretty much a one-lane track, and we're going to have to give it heck. But, you know, Dick and the crew have been working so hard on this thing, and McDonald's and Dynamax and Pontiac and Shell and everybody have been sticking with us. I think it's about time we got him a win.
Jim Yates talking about the one-lane racetrack. He obviously is referring to holding lane choice so he can select the lane that's currently occupied by Warren Johnson in the GM Performance Parts Oldsmobile in his challenge to Steve Schmidt, wheeling the Dyna-Gear Cutlass. An important race indeed, because one more round win here will put either driver into the championship against Jim Yates. Greg Anderson, the crew chief for Warren Johnson, signaling where the starting line is. The pre-stage beam, which lights the top bulb on the tree, is about 6 to 8 inches away from the actual starting line itself for this quarter-mile racing surface. When you're in that beam, you light the second light. Steve Schmidt red lighting away his opportunity. He left way too soon. Warren Johnson crosses the finish line, a 7:27, the best he could run. He was really loose on the racetrack. And a crewman showing his displeasure at the red light by Schmidt, but that's not the first time this season that Schmidt has had trouble at the starting line. Warren Johnson went on to take the win, but it was not easy as he used up a whole lot of the lane sliding around, getting to the finish. Jim Yates and Warren Johnson, the championship round in Pro Stock. Yates has the lane choice.
It was a handful.
More than a handful. We just basically overpowered the racetrack, and we were just lucky to win on that thing. Thankfully, Steve red lighted on it.
How bad is lack of lane choice going to hurt you?
Well, looking at it from that standpoint, everybody's out there shaking. I don't think it's going to really make any difference at all.
It should cool off, too, by the way, before the finals.
And cooler temperatures would help every competitor here, and particularly this man, Scott Coletta. He's trying for 4 in a row. 4 funny cars remain in competition here at the NHRA Autolite Nationals at Sears Point, and it is hot. Temperatures now over 100 degrees. Down on the racetrack, 150 is what some of the thermometers are reading. Think it's hot outside? Think what it's like inside a fire suit.
These drag racers complaining about the heat when they only race 4 or 5 seconds. Hey, they're in the car a lot longer than that, sometimes 20 minutes. Let me show you what John Force wears. Now, this suit is 5 layers thick. It alone weighs over 5 pounds and has these little knit cuffs that really seals in the heat. Let's throw in some boots, also 5 layers thick. How about a scarf? That'll warm him right up. Okay, that's the sock over their head. Got to have gloves here. Got to have this neck collar. And then you got to have this helmet. You think it's cool in there? You might as well be wearing a couple of electric blankets set on high.
Well, it may not be the recommended weight loss routine, and you often wonder why are the drivers out of breath on a hot day. Might well be the answer. Well, John Force had the answer as he was put in that right-hand lane. Etchels had the lane choice, and it did not matter. A 5:46. Now, that's not the kind of time that Force had expected, but neither was the 5:62 by Chuck Etchels what he might have hoped for out of the Kendall Dodge. Remember, back in round number 1, John Force, the number 1 qualifier, had the lane choice and ran that far lane to experiment to see what it was like if he had to run it in competition. Maybe that philosophy paid off for him here. He's in the finals.
But John, at 5:46, maybe that's all she'll hold, huh?
I just have to keep stepping off the gas. I didn't see Etchels. I tried to roll deep on him, and he caught me on the line. And I don't know who left first, but went out there, did the same thing. Trucked pretty good down through there, and got to step off the gas. I'm afraid of losing the race. Get a little closer. I hate telling me Pat's still in here, so maybe we'll get a shot at that Castrol 200.
John's still looking for that 200th win for his sponsor, Castrol. All right, next pair, Al Hoffman, the world's fastest funny car, against Dean Scusa. Scusa wheeling the Matco Tools Quick Shine 99 Pontiac. Part of a family operation. That's his dad, Don. Dean behind the wheel. Tommy Anderson and Helen Hoffman. Anderson holding up the body while Helen, Al's wife, makes a final adjustment. Under the car, the Western Auto Slick 50 car, with a lot of help from their friends at Blower Drive Service, have propelled Al Hoffman this season to 2 times over 306 miles an hour. Don't look for it here, though. We watch Al go through his procedures in staging. And Helen Hoffman signifying the victory by Al. And look at that time, where John Force could not get down that lane without spinning the tires. Al Hoffman threaded the needle to a great 5:23. Look at Dean Scusa. Here in replay, you can see the raw fuel pouring out of one of the header pipes. That indicates loss of a cylinder, and that means nearly 700 horsepower subtracted from the over 5,000 available. You don't think 700 horsepower will make a difference? Look at the margin of victory for Al Hoffman and his great 5:23. So we have a final round. Al Hoffman and John Force. Without question, Hoffman has the lane choice. Steve?
Al Hoffman, this may sound odd, but this car is maybe too good for the nearer left lane.
Yeah, this Murph McKinney car is incredible. We can't get down the left lane because the car's too good, but the right lane, it's going down through there. It's running good. This Pontiac's really sticking great today, and we're happy for Slick 50, Western Auto, and all our sponsors.
Back in the staging lanes, this is Scott Coletta getting ready for his Final Four meeting with Mike Dunn. I don't mean to keep whipping on the same horse, but it's hot here at Sears Point Raceway and the Autolite Nationals as we get ready for the semifinal round of Top Fuel Eliminator. Corey McLenithan in the McDonald's dragster against Pat Austin in the Castrol Syntec machine. 137 degrees track temperature. Earlier, Steve took a look at what can be done.
NHRA's legendary starter for 30 years, Buster Couch, is retired to air-conditioned comfort in the control room. Rick Stewart, former Top Fuel racer, the new official starter. This track is a challenge in this heat.
Yes, sir. 135 degrees track temperature. Just keep the rubber off of it. Put powdered rosin on it to help take the temperature down, and just keep a real close eye on it. We're scraping almost every 8 or 10 cars down the racetrack.
Big umbrella wouldn't hurt.
Yes, sir. A great big umbrella. Big one. One that would cover up me, too.
Everybody's been looking for the cloud cover, but not to be today. So it's Pat Austin and Corey Mack. Something goes wrong on Corey McLenithan's car, and the string of luck continues for Pat Austin. A 5:23 puts him into the finals. And look at the sparks coming out of Corey Mack's car, and a flash of flame as well. He gets it to a safe stop, and the safety safari doing double duty. Track cleanup and meeting any emergency. Corey McLenithan scrambling from the McDonald's Joe Gibbs Racing entry. Let's watch and see what went wrong, because Corey had a substantial lead at half track. At that point, there wasn't much doubt about the outcome until something broke, and look what happened. That was Pat Austin going by for less than a car length win. Steve?
You just never know what might happen if you're around to stage one of these cars, right?
Yeah, you know, it's awful hot out here. I really hope I say the right things, but I need to get my sponsors in here. It's Castrol, Dynamax, Red Wing Shoes, and Oldsmobile. Haven't got much plug for them, but this is a tough conditions out here. I feel like I dropped cylinders for the first 300, 400 feet, and then it took off, and I about ready to step off it because he was pulling away pretty good, and then all of a sudden I saw pieces flying. I said, hey, might get him. We ate that Big Mac.
Good line.
So Pat Austin, the first of our finalists in Top Fuel Eliminator. He will meet in the championship round one of these two drivers. The sun beats down on this racetrack. Mike Dunn hopes that Frank Bradley continues to work his wizardry, which has led to a couple of good, solid 490 runs. Looking for the consistency regardless of track conditions. Jerry Gwynn, Darrell's dad. Darrell, of course, the owner of this team. The opponent, well, you want consistency. You can't find anybody better than Dick LaHaye, the crew chief for Scott Coletta. The American International Airways car currently leading the Winston points chase, and you can only do that by winning rounds of racing. This is one he won't win. As look at the celebration on the starting line. There it is again. 493 at 297. Mike Dunn into the finals, aiming for his second win of the season. At the starting line, it was nearly identical reaction times. Very little difference between the two drivers as they responded to the Christmas tree. As they made their way down track, though, the wisp of smoke that came off the rear tires on the Coletta-driven machine was just enough to slow him and allow Mike Dunn to thunder on for the win. At the far end, as he takes off his helmet, Steve's there.
Considering you didn't have lane choice, that was a whale of an effort.
Well, you know, that was our goal, just to get down the right lane, and we didn't want to do anything stupid. If Scott was going to beat him, we were going to try to make him beat us. I mean, he's been running awfully good. He's a heck of a driver, and both of us are pretty good with the brake handle, and luckily I didn't need to do it. I don't know if he had any problems, but it felt like a decent run, and we're just happy to have this La Victoria team in the final.
Darn decent, 493.
One of the techniques used by the drivers to try to stop the wheel spin is to grab the brakes, and Mike Dunn did it to perfection. He's in the final against Pat Austin and holds the lane choice. Now back again to the far end of the track, and Steve.
Well, I guess all good streaks must come to an end, Scott.
Yeah, you know, Corey went out, so, you know, streaks are streaks, rounds are rounds, you know. We'll have to try and win the next one.
And that'll be in Seattle next weekend right here on ESPN.
Scott was going for 4 in a row. Not to be today. We'll be right back. We're back at the 8th annual running of the Autolite Nationals at Sears Point Raceway, and this is the final round of Pro Stock Eliminator. Jim Yates against Warren Johnson. Let me take a moment to invite you to become a member of the National Hot Rod Association. It's just $52 a year, and for that, you get 48 issues of National Dragster, a patch, a pin, a rule book, and a whole lot more. And if you call the number on your screen right now, you'll receive a free copy of the fabulous Drag Racing 94, the home video from Diamond P. Call today. Jim Yates must always have the thought, will I ever run out of Johnsons? A week ago it was son Kurt. A round ago it was Kurt. Now as wife Tony Yates slaps Jim's windshield to motivate him, he looks across, and who does he see but the blue and white GM Performance Parts Oldsmobile of Dad Warren Johnson. The only advantage that Yates has here, he's got the lane choice. Warren Johnson, the quicker qualified car, into the beams. just seen one of the closest races of all time as Tony Yates gives a big hug to Jesse Builder, Jerry Bickle. Jim Yates wins his first Pro Stock title of the 95 season. A 7:14 elapsed time. Watch at the starting line. The margin of pole shot, if you will, or advantage gained at the start, 0.005 of a second. That went to Jim Yates. The performance advantage went to Warren Johnson. How much? 0.005 of a second. So on the computer, it was a dead heat because it only goes out to the 1,000. If you carry it beyond to the 10,000s, the margin of victory, just inches. Down at the bar end, here's Steve and the happy winner.
Oh, my God. Oh, man.
5 was the lucky number for Jim Yates. Congratulations.
Thank God almighty.
You weren't sure, were you?
No, the wind light didn't work down there on the guardrail, and I thought, I know I had him covered. It was close. I mean, I'll tell you right now.
Would you like me to tell you? You won it on a hole shot.
All right. That is the way to do it. Thank God. I got to thank everybody. I tell you what, McDonald's, Dynamax, Pontiac, Shell, Interstate, Dick Maskin, everybody's done such a good job on this car. But the most I got to thank, people I got to thank the most is my family. You know, Tony and Jonathan and Missy and Jamie are all here today, and this wins for them. Thank you.
As Jim goes over to offer his congratulations to Warren Johnson, Yates takes the points lead by a mere 7 points. Kurt Johnson third. Ekman is fourth, followed by Steve Schmidt. If you think the Yates-Johnson family rivalry is tough, well, take a look at what's on the starting line. John Force and Al Hoffman. Now, as strange as it may seem, bear in mind the man you're looking at right now inside the Western Auto Slick 50 Pontiac knows his car is so good he cannot take advantage of the traction that's available in the lane nearest the camera. Thus, he takes, in every round since the first one, the lane that is considered by other racers somewhat lacking. For everybody but Al Hoffman. He beats John Force and gets just a little bit closer to the points lead as he makes the turnoff. We ride with him, and we get a chance to look at it again. The Castrol Pontiac of John Force and Al Hoffman's Formula Firebird, almost a dead heat off the starting line. By the time they reached the 8th mile point, though, it was Hoffman beginning to pull ahead until at the finish line, a 5:30 elapsed time beat a 5:33. Oh, so close.
I didn't know after that first round if we'd be talking. We are, and you are the champ.
Well, that's what we need. We need to keep knocking them back here. I mean, we're trying to win a world championship, and if it's a round to race, we're still looking good at the end of the year.
That was a great race with Force.
Yeah, that was a good race. That's what the fans come to see, and the fans here are great, fantastic. I mean, we love it here, but they need to cool it down a little bit.
Well, that may not happen, but John Force is still in the lead in the Winston Chase. That's one certainty. Hoffman second, Pendragon, Etchels, and Scusa. That's the top 5. At the starting line, Mike Dunn thinks about what he has to do. Frank Bradley, his crew chief's already done it. The final one race remaining here at the Autolite Nationals at Sears Point, and this is Mr. Lucky, you might call him, Pat Austin, trying to take home a win, basically, on good luck that he has had in the previous rounds. But the one thing he's got to contend with now is the consistency of the La Victoria Salsa car. Frank Bradley, the crew chief, and Mike Dunn motivating themselves to this final round appearance. The Castrol car falling back, Mike Dunn falling off in performance. But I am sure his wife Sandy, who's expecting, and their daughter Sam back home, celebrating, as is the La Victoria crew. Daryl Gwynn down in Florida, he's home. He didn't make it to this race. You know, he's got to be thrilled as well. The dropped cylinder off the starting line reveals itself in the raw fuel pumping out of the pipes, but it didn't matter when you have a lead like that. Mike Dunn's got himself the second win of the year.
Mike, you could not have given Frank Bradley a better anniversary present than a win here in his hometown.
Oh, it's a great win. No doubt about it. I could give my hats off to the crew. You know, as you know, it was a little bit warm today, and crew did a great job. You know, Brett, Chad, Mark, Wayno, Scott. I mean, they pulled through with this heat, and it was just a great win for this La Victoria team. I don't know. You know, we had a little bit of problem with that last run. It felt like it dropped some cylinders, but I'll tell you, you know, with our sponsors, La Victoria, Mopar, Mac Tools, Kindle, Goodyear, Autolite Nationals, we love it here. Got to say hi to Samantha. Love you. You'll get a present. Frank also wanted to say, hey, say hi to his grandkids. He's going to buy you guys presents, and make sure they're big ones because he makes lots of money. Don't let him get away cheap, kids.
Frank Bradley celebrating his one-year anniversary with the Gwin team. Scott Coletta still the leader, followed by Corey Mack, Dixon, Dunn now fourth, and Blaine Johnson in fifth. 1 week from tonight, it's the Northwest Nationals from Seattle, right here on ESPN Speed World. Our coverage brought to you today by Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life, and by the more than 1,000 AutoZone stores across America. AutoZone, the best parts in auto parts. It's celebration time. Watch out, Frank. Oh, boy. Happy anniversary. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan. Coverage of the Autolite Nationals has been a production of Dynamite.